talked to you guys a few times before. Actually, the first time I called, it was you and John.
Oh, cool.
I was going over some scientific literature, and I've noticed the word unnatural is in scientific literature here and there. And then I looked up in a thesaurus that unnatural and supernatural are directly synonymous with each other.
Wow.
Does that mean that
no
scientists? No. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I wouldn't agree.
They use the word unnatural pretty regularly, and typically they're describing things that are unexplainable by natural, laws and stuff like that. So I was just wondering if that was in some way.
So here's the thing: there are plenty of scientists who believe in the supernatural, but they don't believe it on the basis of science. Science has nothing to say about the supernatural. And I can't speak to all of these because there may be people out there who are scientists and educated in science who are trying to argue on behalf of the supernatural by using science in some fashion, but you can't get there. And by and large, unnatural just means unusual, out of the ordinary, abnormal. Here, let me get the thesaurus here. Extraordinary, strange, odd, peculiar, unorthodox, exceptional, irregular, atypical, untypical. I don't even see supernatural on the quick synonyms there. So
it would depend a lot on context.
It would certainly be listed in a thesaurus as one of many potential synonyms, but that's because words have different uses. And so you have to figure out what word they're using and why. But at the end of the day, like Francis Collins is the former head of the Human Genome Project, and he's a good scientist. He believes in God and Jesus and the Trinity because he came across a waterfall frozen in 3, but he doesn't say that science confirms God. As a matter of fact, that he's on record as saying that the genetic evidence alone is enough to confirm common ancestry, so any model, any religious model that denies common ancestry, he would reject. But when you find words like unnatural, there's a couple of different things. One is, what do they actually mean by it? And you can't just go to a thesaurus and pick it out. Otherwise, I could just as easily go to thesaurus and say, no, what they mean is strange. So scientists are then talking about strange stuff. So you have to dig in to find out what it is that was meant there. And then you have to dig in to find out, is this actually science? Or is this just science? There's plenty of papers that get published that should never be published. Peer review is not perfect. But at the end of the day, what science does is it comes up with the most reliable models and theories that give the best explanation for the available evidence. It's not a proclamation of truth. It's a tentative position. And it does not get to appeal to the supernatural. So even if someone were using unnatural and supernatural as a coded synonym, the fact that something is unnatural, that we have no natural explanation for it, is distinct from. Sorry?
That doesn't mean that it's supernatural, I guess. So
there's a contextual thing where if I say that's unnatural, I'm not claiming that it's supernatural. I'm claiming that we have no natural explanation for it. But when I claim it's supernatural, I'm asserting an explanation that it is something necessarily beyond nature. It reminds me a little bit about people when they say UFO. There are absolutely unidentified flying objects. The problem is when people identify them as alien spacecraft. Now they're no longer unidentified. They are incorrectly identified as far as we can tell.
Yeah, that sounds understandable. Cool. Well, I just wanted to straighten that out. Thank you very much.
Yep. By the way, if you come across something like that, you can a lot of scientists you can just reach out to and say, "Hey, when you use the word unnatural in your paper here, what exactly were you meaning?" And within specific fields, there is jargon that can be confusing. When we talk about mitochondrial Eve, creationists ran with that. Look, the scientists are saying there was actually an Eve, and no, they were using that as a placeholder for an unknown ancestor.
Last time we talked, I brought up virtual particles and how they pop in and out of existence, and how that seemed like it's something that was supernatural. Because I connected it to say if I could pop in and out of existence, would I be considered supernatural? And it just seemed like in my head that if I could pop in and out of existence, that if people saw that, they would consider me to be supernatural. So,
I wouldn't.
Or they would consider that to be some kind of supernatural thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't, because for me, as soon as you say it's supernatural, you're saying it's beyond nature. And what would really be happening isn't that, it wouldn't be the case that Billy was popping in and out of existence. It would be Billy would be able to give the appearance of popping in and out of existence, because I have no way to tell the difference between you appearing to pop in and out of existence and you actually popping in and out of existence. See what I mean?
Right. So
I would just say that's cool. How did he do that?
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, when you talk about particles that pop in and out of existence, it may just be that, given our limited ability to investigate, that appears to be what's going on, but it may in fact be something else. But even if that was accurate, the only reasonable conclusion we could reach is we don't know what the causal explanation is for that. And if someone were to claim that it's necessarily supernatural, they're saying, oh, there can't be a natural explanation, which is an assertion that we know everything about the natural world and have precluded a natural explanation when we're just getting started.
Do you think that, so gravity is not considered supernatural, but we don't know what gravity is. So
well, we don't have a full understanding of it, but a reproducible effect. You could say the same thing about electricity at some point in the past. You could say the same thing about magnetism, anything else, and that kind of underlines the point. The fact that there's something that we can observe, label, and even measure without knowing everything about how and why it is, doesn't mean that the ultimate explanation needs to be supernatural. This is the mistake that we've made throughout history, is when we're not able to figure it out right away, then we just go to, well, we're so smart and we know so much, and if we can't figure this out, it must be a god, it must be a supernatural thing, it must be something beyond our ability to understand. And that's a mistake.
But we are pretty smart. We're really, really smart.
And we're so smart that every single time we've found out what the actual cause for something spooky was, it's never been supernatural. Now that's a track record.
But that's because we could figure it out. There are things that we can't figure out because they're not detectable.
How do you tell the difference? How do you tell the difference between something you can't figure out and something you can't figure out yet?
Yeah.
Not detectable. If it's outside of observable fields, then it can't even be detected. It's kind of like
if there's something that cannot be detected in any way, then there's no justification to believe that thing is real.
But dark matter can't be detected in any way.
Then I don't believe it's real. If that were true, I don't believe it's real. However, what we're currently calling dark matter is from observations of the effects that it has. In much the same, it'd be like saying you can't see wind, so wind doesn't exist, but wind does exist.
So it's the same thing as gravity. We know as much about gravity as we do about dark matter, because all we do is measure the effects of gravity. We don't actually, we can't actually detect what dark matter is.
Sure.
Or I'm sorry, what gravity is.
There'd be no reason to postulate it, though. There'd be no reason to postulate it if there was if there wasn't some effect that we're seeing that needs an explanation.
Yeah, these are models that are used as fledgling explanations for direct observations.
There's no place in the standard model for gravity yet, I guess, and there's no place, obviously, for dark matter. So I guess we just kind of go by what we can see, the effect, like you said, the effects they have on other things.
And there's no equation for God, but it's also gods are the sort of kind of ad hoc explanations that we used to come up with for unknown things. And when we dig in on what the actual observable phenomenon is that we're trying to explain, there's no need to posit a God either. It's,
But it's natural. But it's natural for people to. Oxford did a study that proved that belief in a higher power is a natural human instinct.
No,
it's a pure.
So it's yes. Is it a natural human? Yes, for some. Some people are more.
I would say
some people are more prone to it than others, but to the extent that we've demonstrated anything, it's that reaching the conclusion that a God exists in the absence of detection and evidence in support of it demonstrates a flawed thinking, and that's hardly remarkable that humans would reach incorrect conclusions since we do it all the time.
But there's a lot of supporting evidence for the existence of a higher power, though.
No, there's not.
Like what?
Yeah. There's like the genome, cosmological constant, things like that.
None of those are evidence of a higher power at all, and not in the sense of any sort of intelligent power.
But do you believe that there would be? I mean, like, you often say that. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. You say that God would want to make itself known to us, or it wants people to know.
I don't know. It depends on the God. But so if there is a God that wants to make itself known, it can show up right here on the show and broadcast alongside of us, right?
But what if it doesn't want to make itself known?
Okay.
What if life is?
Then it's irrelevant. A God that is intentionally hiding is indistinguishable from a God that doesn't exist. And by the way, if God does not want to be found, then when people say, "Oh, the cosmological constant is evidence for God," they are necessarily wrong, because God would be able to hide that if He wants to. You can't run around claiming that you've detected the undetectable. God doesn't want to be found, but I found Him. Holy crap! Are you more powerful than God?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that they found God. They just found the construct or something that would point to the construct that of.
Could God create a universe where there is no evidence and no reasonable way to conclude that He exists if that's what He wants?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to. I'm just saying
it's funny that on that question we tend to get an "I don't know," and yet on the question of whether or not the cosmological constant is evidence for God, you know.
That's support. Well, no, I didn't say evidence for God. I said that's support for
I swear. Okay, I'm not. I guess I won't argue with it, but somebody here can rewind, because I thought you said there was mountains of evidence for God, including things like the cosmological constant.
I meant support for intelligent design, not not the existence of.
I think now we're nitpicking over whether or not that's evidence. Yeah. So, it's the fact that something is consistent with an intelligent designer does not mean that it is evidence for an intelligent designer, because
sorry,
you might as well be able to say everything that exists, therefore, is consistent with an intelligent designer designing it. So everything, and actually you'd be biblically accurate then, because all things attest to the glory of God.
It's also consistent with not being designed, so that doesn't really help.
Yeah,
I don't really do religion, but I. Would you agree? There's only two options, though. There's God and nothing. Those are the only two options.
No. There's God and not God.
Not God, yeah.
Not God is not nothing.
And that would be nothing, though.
How do you reach? No. Let's, from a straight logic standpoint, a direct logical negation is some God exists or no God exists, and you are taking the no God exists side and asserting that means nothing exists.
Yeah, because there's an infinite regress. Science always creates an infinite regress.
Oh my gosh!
The only thing that could solve an infinite regress would be a God.
A God can't solve an infinite regress either, but you don't necessarily get to an infinite regress. And just by definition, the state of affairs where there's not a God is not co-equal to nothing. You're just asserting that. You can't demonstrate it. If you could, you would have proved God exists, and you would have a Nobel Prize.
I don't see how that follows. But
you don't think if somebody could prove that the existence of the universe necessarily means that a God exists, you don't think they give a Nobel Prize for that?
Yeah, but nobody can actually show you God's birth certificate. Because,
Holy shit. Holy shit. Why am I even talking to you at this point?
Okay.
Here we go.
All right.
Pay attention for a couple of seconds here, Billy.
Okay.
You just asserted that if there is no God, there must therefore be nothing. And when I pointed out
everything would have had to come from nothing.
Holy shit, can I finish?
How long? Okay, go ahead.
And then when I pointed out the flaw in that, you went to, well, nobody can show God's birth certificate. Well, that's extra stupid because God doesn't have a birth certificate and God wasn't born under most models. So here's the thing. If someone could demonstrate that the existence of the universe necessarily means that a God exists, you don't think they would get a Nobel Prize for that?
I really would.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that nothing. That doesn't mean that there's anything besides God and nothing in the as options. What are the other options?
That's a fallacy as well, by the way. But your claim,
false dichotomy.
Your claim is that either there's God or there's nothing. So you are asserting the very thing that you agree would get you a Nobel Prize. So prove it and go get your Nobel Prize.
The only way to prove it would be...
Then you don't have good reason to believe it. If you have good reason to believe it, then you can demonstrate it.
Well, I mean, God and intelligent design, that's being able to demonstrate intelligent design is different than being able to demonstrate the actual thing that is God.
Sure.
I don't think you can demonstrate intelligent design either.
The existence of something is not dependent upon what you know about it. So, I mean, God can exist and us not know what it is.
Correct.
That's true, but you haven't demonstrated that there is an intelligent designer.
You also haven't demonstrated that the existence of the universe necessitates a God.
I can demonstrate that the characteristics of reality exhibit attributes of design. That's a given. Like
you can show that the universe appears to have design, but what causes that appearance of design?
I mean, design is the result of intelligence.
A design is the result of intelligence, but the appearance of design is not necessarily the result of intelligence. That is something that you're manufacturing in your head.
You're saying that looks designed to me.
Yes. Design needs to be demonstrated.
We can recognize hallmarks of design, though.
Yeah, we can. We can recognize hallmarks of design. Do you know what they are?
Things like the genome and
No. The genome is not evidence of design. There's no evidence that the genome was designed. There is the appearance.
There doesn't have to be evidence that it was designed. But
there has to be evidence for it that it was designed before it is reasonable for you to claim that it was designed or that it is evidence for design.
No.
We recognize design by contrasting it with that which naturally occurs. This thing,
no,
yes.
Design with our knowledge.
Holy crap, Billy. We recognize design by contrasting it with that which naturally occurs. Some things naturally occur, and all the evidence points to them naturally occurring. Some things apparently do not naturally occur, and the evidence points to them being designed.
But natural order, but if the standard model, if the components of the standard model are designed, meaning the force characteristics and constants that are, that are exhibited by the components of the standard model, all the little particles and stuff, if any of those features were different, if any of the qualities of those particles were different at all, not only would there not be life, but in most cases, the universe would not exist.
And that does not prove design. The fact that the outcome is beneficial to you does not mean that you were the intended fucking purpose. Is there anything about the human genome that in any way violates mundane chemical processes following physical law?
For it to come about?
You don't know how it could come about. Nobody does. Abiogenesis isn't solved. You cannot assert that the only explanation is supernatural or design because you don't know what the possibilities are.
Well, they recreate models of reality using supercomputers that still can't generate a genome.
Oh, well, congratulations. We're back to we're really, really smart, and we've come up with really, really smart computers who haven't figured it out. So since we haven't figured it out any other way, I'm just going to go ahead and go with design. That is a fallacy. It may be designed, but you have to demonstrate that it's designed, and you don't get to demonstrate it's designed by saying computers haven't been able to show it's not designed.
Not yet, anyway.
If something is designed, then that explains why it appears that way. So
no, this is a fallacy. I swear, Billy, this is so frustrating because this is a fallacy. You're saying if something is designed, that explains why it appears designed. That is one explanation. That is one, Billy, that is one, holy shit. That is, Billy, shut up. That is one potential explanation for why something would appear designed.
And there are no others.
Okay, you're wrong. You are now putting yourself in the position of being godlike by asserting that there's no other possible explanation.
Well,
how do you know so much about the universe that you've concluded there's no other possible explanation?
Because of physics, dude. We know the physical laws are the same throughout the whole universe. That's how
physical laws do not require an intelligent designer.
The laws of physics go all the way down to the fundamental particles.
It does not matter. Okay. Here's a thing, and it appears designed. Hang on.
Okay, go.
Here's a thing. It appears designed. Does that mean it was necessarily designed?
There's no other option.
Holy shit, we're done. Goodbye. Goodbye. You guys can't be honest about this. This is a really simple exercise. Here is a thing, X. It appears to be designed. Does that mean it is designed? The one and only correct answer is no. The mere appearance of design does not mean that it was necessarily designed. If we recognize design by merely looking at shit and going, well, that looks designed, so it must have been. That's how we got to God's throwing lightning bolts. That's how we got to only God can make a tree. Okay? So now we have something with an appearance of design. The process that we must then go through is let us explore and find candidate explanations for that appearance of design. And the candidate explanations fall into two categories. It was actually designed, or it was not actually intentionally designed and merely gives the appearance of it. And this is something that we see in nature. Weird formations, etc. And we are pattern recognition machines. That's what we do. And so we are prone to the mistake of seeing agency where there is not agency. And so before you can say the one and only explanation for the appearance of design in this case is that it was designed, you have to list candidate explanations and exclude all of the others. And on a universal scale, you can't do that. Perhaps your God could, and then maybe he should show his ass up here at the show and say, yes, it was all designed. Here's the evidence for it. But until then, just looking at things and saying, gosh, that looks really complicated. It has hallmarks of design. Clearly, somebody intelligently designed this, is the exact thing that the model for the theory of evolution by natural selection points out is wrong. Theory of evolution by natural selection points out why we have the diversity of life that we have. Why do we have chipmunks and giraffes and rhinoceroses and humans and et cetera? How did we get from, hey, there's no life here, to now there's abundant life and it's incredibly diverse? Now, we don't have an explanation currently for life from non-life. We have candidate explanations, the Miller-Urey experiment, which doesn't map to conditions on Earth at the time, but at least it shows that it's possible through natural processes to get amino acids and things like that. We haven't solved that problem. But what we do know is that when we explore the diversity of life, we find evidence for common ancestry. We find multiple pathways to solve the same problem. There's a lot of different types of eyes that have evolved. Why? Because creatures that can tell the difference between light and darkness have advantages that others don't. And so they live to pass on those genes. And sometimes it results in an eye like a mollusk eye that's, just a big muscle that basically works like your iris. And so some animals only see light and dark, and some animals see shadow. And then there's lots of videos you can watch, and you can see how a more curved thing does this. And then when you get a cornea and a lens and things like that you can do, you get to better and better eyesight. We're not the pinnacle of eyesight. I can't see as well as an eagle, even if I put my glasses on.
We have a blind spot.
So there's a model that explains this, that explains all of the available evidence and is contradicted by none of it. If there is an intelligent designer of life in the human genome in the way that you think there is, then we're back to what Billy had said earlier. That intelligent designer is intentionally hiding. It's not like, you could have written a God, designed by God on the genome.
Yeah.
But you don't have that. And you don't have any God coming forward to say that. So what you have is this robust appearance of design. And the reason I harp on this point is because in Billy's case, we had a God that's trying to hide, but yet we found him anyway. We had a God that we see things and we don't have any other explanation. The fact that we don't have another explanation, he is then asserting there is no other explanation, which requires God-like levels of knowledge. And fundamentally, we recognize design by contrasting it with nature. If something occurs naturally, a tree, a human genome, and this process, well, how could it possibly self-replicate? And if you changed one thing, yes, if you changed one thing, we'd be extinct, like 99% of all the species that have ever existed. This is the process. And we live in this time where we are arrogantly the pinnacle of evolution, even though that's not a fact. Evolution has no design, no intent, and there is no pinnacle. It's just life. It's just this differentiation of processes. But we feel special. And it's very frustrating to say, you know what, I live in this universe. I look around and I see things. Look at the amazing things we've done. We built this microphone stand that's cantilevered and has springs, and there's a microphone on it that can process sound and turn into electricity that we can broadcast nearly instantaneously around the world. All those things were designed, and we know that because these things don't occur naturally, or at least we can say there's no evidence of a microphone with a microphone stand occurring naturally. But there is evidence for trees occurring naturally. We know about the reproductive processes of animals. We know how we get to offspring. And so it's a mistake to look at things that all the evidence says occurs naturally and go, you know what? I get it, but we don't know how, and we don't know why. And why is the most important question. And I would say that in that context, why is the question that's most poisonous? Because when we look at the world, we're desperate to know why. And we are always reluctant to admit that it may be that the only answer to why is because that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there something rather than nothing, John?
There just is.
There just is. Now, if there is another why, if in fact there's something rather than nothing because that's what a God wanted, then that would need to be demonstrated. And the fact that you're uncomfortable with saying, because it is, or I don't know why there's something rather than nothing, I just know there is. And when I have evidence for the why, then I'll accept that. But we spend a lot of time tracing down whys that are really just our baggage. Why is it raining? Well, technically, water evaporated and, you've got the water cycle and it gets up there into clouds. No, but why is it raining here right now? Well, because the specifics of this is that the water was collected and the clouds moved over to this area. And at this point, the temperature and everything, temperature pressure got to the point where the clouds, releases water, et cetera. But yes, but why is it raining on me? And that's the why that drives us to there just has to be a God. There couldn't be any other reason. God is punishing me. He wanted to mess up my hair today, and so he rained on it. And I said, screw you, God. I'm cutting all that hair off, so you can't do that anymore. Anyway.
Well, and even to say that if the universal constant was different, the universe wouldn't even exist, well, then we wouldn't be here talking about it.
Yeah.
But there's a built-in assumption that there was some kind of goal that the universe should be just like it is now, and that humans would evolve on this planet to, postulate whether there's a God or not. And that's just, it's really arrogant for one thing.
That's all part of God's plan.